Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe. The EU Commission has presented a plan to boost Europe's clean tech industry. The Net Zero Industry Act aims to simplify permits for green hydrogen, solar panels, windmills and other devices that are considered crucial to Europe's energy security and its strategic independence. To discuss these proposals and to see how these clean technologies might actually be delivered to a mass market, I'm joined by Damian Boeselager, a German MEP from the Greens. He's a co-founder of the pan-European political movement Volt Europa, and Klemen Groschel, a Slovenian MEP from the centrist Renew Europe bloc. Thank you so much, both of you, to being my guests. Let's just set the big picture for our viewers, the geostrategic picture here. This Net Zero Act is really about countering China and the US to some extent as well, isn't it, Klemen Groschel?
Yes, it is. It's actually a reaction, and I think it's the right one. There are some deficiencies and some things which should be yet to be decided in this package, but in general, it is a response of the European Union towards what China is actually doing in its industry, in this prevalence which it has in dominance in the green technologies, and also reaction to the Inflation Reduction Act, which was accepted by the United States and which threatens that a lot of European industry will go to the United States because of the subsidies and tax reductions, which are very attractive to industry. So I think it's a positive step, but of course it needs some additional work to be done on it.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. But first, I just want to bring in Damian Boeselager. What's the big significance of this on a global scale, of this Net Zero Act for you?
For me, I'm a bit more cautious. I think what's definitely true is that we need to look at European competitiveness. But when it comes to how much money we've spent on the European level, and I think rightly, for example, by the Recovery and Resilience Facility, I think we are not so far behind. And so the question is, what are the other factors that could actually drive European competitiveness, and is our European response now the right one?
Let's go a little bit more detail into the actual proposals that the European Commission unveiled. And we can see that there's been a real battle about nuclear energy in the negotiations leading up to this. France trying to have nuclear power classified as a strategic net zero technology. What do you take away from that, both of you? Maybe Klemen Groschel first.
It's not only France, it's also, I think it's 8 other member states who are supporting this initiative. I think that the reality at the moment is that we will need to have a certain amount of nuclear in our energy supply and electricity supply. Slovenia, as a member state where I'm coming from, is also part of this club supporting nuclear. What will be the discussion, probably also in the European Parliament and later on in the trialogue, will be if the nuclear, which is already mentioned as a second tier source, will be moved forward to this first tier of future energy sources for the European Union.
Damian Boeselager, what do you make of the nuclear component of this Net Zero Act?
I think we have to differentiate a bit between ideology and actual practicality when we think about nuclear. So the whole taxonomy regulation battle about whether nuclear is green or not, and now again for the Net Zero Industry Act, is about whether countries should be investing into nuclear to be part of the future energy mix. And I think here we just need to weigh the environmental issues that we still have with nuclear waste, the security issues, versus the potential positive effect on having less CO2 emissions, but also how much money does it cost for each bit of energy that I get out of it. And I have to say that I'm not always convinced that nuclear going forward is really the right thing, the smart thing to do with the current technology. And therefore, I think to invest in research, to think about maybe next generation reactors to be technology open, but to also understand the limitations of current technologies is the right approach.
But I mean, obviously, that's a political choice, isn't it? There could be a decision made to make the technology cleaner for things like nuclear waste.
It's a political choice, of course, but it's also a political message. And if we send the wrong message, there will be no research and investments in research in nuclear and any other technologies which will not be listed. And this was the fight we fought in the taxonomy, as it was mentioned. And for me, it's important that the European Union does not exclude nuclear just as is itself.
How long does it take? I mean, how long does it take to really, build a new nuclear plant? How much time do we have to fight climate change? I think all these questions are scientific questions. The truth is that very likely the current technology, the current energy mix needs heavy investment in actual renewable energies, such as wind, solar, and water. And so I think we should really focus also on what can deliver results fast. And that's why I'm happy that the Net Zero Industry Act also has, deregulation when it comes to these renewable energies that can actually help us fight the climate crisis.
Clement Groschel, I'd like to get your reaction to that point about these actual renewables. Are you convinced that they can be delivered in an effective way and in a way that is affordable as well over the next 10 years?
The issue with the renewables, and I'm strongly supporting this, because in Slovenia our program is to have as much as possible of solar and wind energy. We build something like the amount which is similar to the capacity of our own only nuclear power plant. But the reality is that solar power at the moment is not providing the nominal power output as it was envisaged by the plan. So this is what is the issue with the renewables. We can build them, we shall, and we will invest in the renewables. This is no discussion, but will these renewables provide us with the amount of electricity and an energy which will be needed for our industry and for our transformation in this Green Deal? This is the issue.
You're in favor of keeping some nuclear energy as a sort of backup?
We will need nuclear energy for two reasons. One will be for the sustainability of our electrical power grids. And the second one will be connected with the hydrogen, because we will not be able to provide enough amount of hydrogen only from the renewables, or we will be dependent from the import of hydrogen from countries which will be able to provide sufficient amount of hydrogen which will be needed for our industry. So we will have an issue of dependence, import dependence, and also the quantities needed for the industry.
I think what we need to understand is we're talking here about taxpayers' euros. Where should they be invested? And I'm just not convinced that, especially when we talk about hydrogen, that investing into new nuclear plants that will cost us 15 years, and I mean, you can look at the construction times, 15 years to build, to then produce, even though they have a stable output, hydrogen, it doesn't seem to make much sense to me, to be honest, because if you actually now invest in actual renewable energy, the positive side here with hydrogen, you can actually stabilize the output that they have in terms of energy production, because you can produce more or less hydrogen depending on whether the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. And that's the actual benefit. So to produce hydrogen with nuclear plants, to create a baseload, I think that is actually not so sensible with the current technologies.
So Clement Groschel, how would you see hydrogen production actually working and bringing it on a mass scale?
The hydrogen production will be a little bit more complex, I think, as we are now expecting. But I would say that nuclear will be important also from this aspect of stabilization of our electric power grids. When there will be sufficient amount of electricity, this can be converted to hydrogen independently, either from the nuclear, either from the renewables. And this is something which we agree. On the other side, we also have the issue, will the hydrogen be produced only for storage? Will it be distributed through the different networks of, let's say, hydrogen pipelines, or will we have something which will be more like that huge energy-intensive industries like aluminium smelters, steel factories will have their own production, which will be probably, I hope it will be run by the renewables, and this will be so-called direct consumption. So this production which will be done will be completely directly used for the production in industry. The other aspect, of course, is traffic. In traffic, we will need a lot of hydrogen, especially for logistics, for trucks, replacing existing trucks, and also for public transport in buses and so on. So hydrogen will be a very mixed picture, and it will be very important how this whole emerging market, I would say, will be governed, and this will be one of the issues also.
A very mixed picture.
Months.
a very mixed picture. And so if you don't use nuclear energy to produce the hydrogen on a mass scale, Damian Berslager, that means that the technology has to come a long way before it's actually deliverable, no?
So I think, first of all, it's important to say that we're not currently talking about whether we should, stop nuclear plants that are currently running. The only question is whether taxpayers' money should be going into new nuclear plants or should be incentivized to go there. I mean, that's literally the question we're asking ourselves. And I have seen in Germany and multiple places where there are really cool and interesting new hydrogen startups developing on the coastline to actually turn wind energy into hydrogen, actual green hydrogen. So this is working. I've seen that the deregulation to be able to build solar panels next to train tracks that is happening right now in Germany under the Green government is bringing a lot of people to think about how can I maybe make money with new solar panels next to, like on my land next to train tracks. So there's a lot we can do. There's a very fast investment currently going on. And unless someone can actually calculate for me that a new investment to new nuclear plants for the next 15 years can somehow outweigh the fact that we have then still nuclear waste for the next 40, 50 years being produced, I don't see why we should, on the EU level, incentivize investment in nuclear that isn't really, solving the issue right now that we need to solve. So I'm just not convinced that we can get there with this kind of signaling.
Yeah, I mean, clearly your two positions on nuclear energy are quite distinct there. So thank you so much for bringing your two perspectives, Clement Groschel and Damian Berslager. That's all we have time for this edition of Talking Europe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.